So the Space Marines and the Sons of Sanguinius no less have taken down one of the biggest tournaments around. Let's take a look at a Blood Angels winning list that saw off all comers and used a decent amount of Death Company. Hello and welcome back to Auspex Tactics, where today we're talking Blood Angels, and I thought we'd take a look at three of the strongest army lists for the Sons of Sanguinius right now, spearheaded by a list by Zach Kerstetter, who's won one of the biggest and most serious tournaments of Nephilim, and seen off all comers to put the angry Space Marines in the top spot. Currently, Blood Angels in general I'd say are doing well for Space Marines in general, but Space Marines in general aren't really doing very well in 40k as a whole. As a faction in Nephilim, their tournament win rate is around about 46%, a good chunk lower than average, though admittedly they are far better than the majority of their Space Marine counterparts. Nephilim does seem to have worked out quite nicely for them, perhaps in no small parts to decent points drops on some key units, certainly Sanguinary Guard, but also Death Company and Assault Squads. It's always fairly impressive when a slightly underwhelming or middling faction manages to win a grand tournament of this size. Prior to this, I think they'd only won one decent sized event in Nephilim so far, though a fair few other lists have placed on the podium, and we'll take a look at another couple of second place ones after the big one. In general, currently I'd say that Blood Angels are usually carried by their strong chapter tactic plus Sanguinary Guard, +1 to advance and charge, and +1 to wound when they do get in combat is really quite a nice combo. Sanguinary Guard are just crazy efficient as well, 30 points for really quite a tough unit with Armour of Contempt, and a huge chunk of damage to medium strength attacks. The vast majority of competitive lists for them tend to start with 3 units of Sanguinary Guard, and supported by various characters such as the Sanguinary Priest, Ancient, and Dante himself. Since the Nephilim changes, they're often also supported by a few units of troops, maybe some Death Company with Thunderhammers, and Assault Squads are certainly making a bit more of a comeback now they got some free gear. They're a bit better at shooting down some elites up close, and getting a squad of fast-moving Space Marines on the table for 90 points isn't too bad in the first place. So first up, out of the 3 lists, here is the list by Zach Kerstetter. First at Kansas City Open, 180 people and weighing 8-0. This one is one of Games Workshop's own major tournament series going around the US, and this was featured on a couple of games streamed, I believe both times playing Chaos Demons. The list itself is led by a fairly typical cast of characters. Commander Dante is the Warlord, a solid melee combatant, 4 rerolls for 1 unit, farming you a command point, and as he's the Warlord he'll also give nearby Sanguinary Guard a +1 to hit. He can also use an Epic Deed stratagem for 0 CP as well. That can be quite nice for fighting in death if he does get slain in combat. His 2+ armor save is certainly no bad thing either with Armor of Contempt. Otherwise we've got a Sanguinary Priest with Jump Pack and Rites of War, a Feel No Pain type save, a bit of healing, resurrecting models from the dead for 1 CP. That can help make some charges a little bit shorter, and also as a Sanguinary Priest he can put units in the Assault Doctrine earlier, so maybe extra AP and an extra attack for either the Death Company or the Sanguinary Guard. Rites of War is also pretty handy for all these elites. Getting objectives secured as you're jumping up the board is no bad thing either. Then for the support characters in the elite slot, there's a Sanguinary Ancient with the Oncarmine Sword. He takes Soul Warden for a 5+ save against mortal wounds, really quite nice as that's one of the better ways to deal with Sanguinary Guard. And otherwise he provides 2 important buffs. He has a chapter banner that you can use in the command phase to make a core unit get +1 to their hit roll. That's going to be great on either the Death Company or the Sanguinary Guard to be honest, and perhaps more importantly with that Wrath of Baal jump pack, it means that nearby jump pack units get an extra 2 inch worth of movement, and Blood Angels certainly feel like they're a lot more threatening when they're moving 14 inches with their jump packs rather than 12. Finally we've got Chaplain Lamartes, 120 points for a Death Company character Chaplain. Again he's an okay combat character in himself with a jump pack, but he gives out a few important buffs to the Death Company. He passively allows them to reroll charges, really quite nice for long threat range. He can potentially have them rerolling hits with the Litany of Hate, and he can give them the Canticle of Hate as well, giving them an extra 2 inch to their charge, theoretically meaning that if you wanted a Deep Striker unit, you could maybe have a 7 inch charge rerolling if you wanted to. Otherwise it could just give them a very long bound across the board. Besides that, he's also got Mantra of Strength to make him into a lot more of a meaty, hard-hitting character. That'd give him extra damage. Then for the squads that are leading into battle, there's a couple of units that can set up in the midfield. 1 unit of 5 Incursors, a very solid unit for Blood Angels troops, start on the midfield, and with their AP they've got actually enough threats to really bully light infantry units. And there's also 1 unit of Eliminators as well, a pretty solid choice in just about every Space Marine list. This one has an Instigator Bolt Carbine and 2 Las Fusils, meaning that you can potentially move, shoot, move, get a whole ton of movement out of them in 1 turn to get to an objective, or potentially be popping in and out of cover, firing off last fusel shots, and then retreating to safety. The Eliminators and the Incursors could be pretty good for raising early banners as well. Then we get onto the real damage dealing meat of the list. There's 3 units of Death Company and 3 of Sanguinary Guard. 2 of the Death Company squads are equipped with 4 Thunderhammers and Jump Packs, very efficient squads that like just about most of the buffs that all the characters can bring, particularly Dante's full rerolls or early Assault Doctrine from the Sanguinary Priest, and certainly Lamartie's rerolls to hit in combat as well. I believe that there's just enough CP to allow one of them to go bounding up the board with Forlorn Fury if you want a devastating first turn charge with a whole ton of Thunderhammers. I think they've spent 5 CP total between the character upgrades and the detachments, and with Dante's extra one that would give you enough. Otherwise there's another cheap Death Company unit just with jump packs. Still a crazy amount of attacks with chainswords though, and can potentially make use of Lamartie's buffs and things. Quite a good one for bullying light infantry I guess. And then pretty much standard for Blood Angels list, 3 big units of Sanguinary Guard. These ones are opting to take the Oncoming swords for the extra AP, and in each unit there's 2 Inferno pistols, 1 unit only gets 1. Often with Blood Angels they quite like to keep the Sanguinary Guard back and safe behind backfield ruins, and then just have 1 big unit go out and mess up the enemy army each turn, so they know there's going to be even more threats coming turn on turn, and they can't deal with everything until the game ends. I guess against different opponents you could play differently though. If you could just afford to rush them, then so be it. Finally, to round out the list, there's 1 unit of 5 Assault Marines. These guys get free gear these days and can pick up some fun stuff. Just 90 points, and they get a sergeant with a Lightning Claw and Inferno pistol, plus 2 plasma pistols for a little bit of anti-elite punch up close. Still probably mainly just a bit of a bully unit to take down light infantry that don't really want to be in combat and things. But between the Blood Angels, Chapter Tactic and Assault Doctrine, they generally are going to be quite threatening still. Finally, last but not least, there is a Whirlwind in attendance as well. Not really very good for the amount of range damage that it can put out, though it might be able to shave off a few wounds off a light infantry here or there. But mainly good in Blood Angels and Assault Armies, just because it allows you that stratagem to make the enemy fight last and ignore Overwatch. Space Marines in general don't really have all that easy access to fight last rules, so the Whirlwind can be perhaps the most reliable way of handing it out if you are willing to pay the CP. And it basically counters the enemy interrupting for 2 command points. You can afford to charge 2 different units with, say, 2 different units of Sanguinary Guard. Fight first with one of them, safe in the knowledge that the opponent can't interrupt with the other because it's fighting last. Would be a reasonable one to park somewhere safe on a home field objective as well, and just be a few more wounds on there while all the scary angels go jumping up towards the enemy. In terms of secondary objectives, I did notice that the stream had recorded the last couple of games that were played, and it looks like the list does have the option to use all the Blood Angel specific ones if you need to. In one of the games there was both a Relentless Assault, the Fury of the Lost One, and the Blade of Sanguinius all in play at the same time. Relentless Assault is basically get your units into the enemy's deployment zone and keep them out of yours. That one's not too harsh when you've got this many units moving forward. And Fury of the Lost is basically trying to kill things with Death Company. With 3 units plus Lamartie's, there aren't enough units that you're going to have a reasonable crack at that. I see that Raise the Banners was also used in the last game as well. There are plenty of infantry units that would be able to do that too. Overall, it's really quite cool to see Blood Angels doing quite this well. There's certainly all the usual Sanguinary Guard stuff here, but really quite nice to see Death Company in such representation as well. Plus a few other random scattered support units and that Whirlwind. Definitely a big player achievement as well. I feel like particularly with Blood Angels, you could use the list in a very different way and get completely different results. It's definitely a fast moving list with a lot of options. I guess you just need to know which units to go for and when. Moving on to the second list of the day, this was from a grand tournament a week or so back, another competitive Blood Angels list, this one run by an Alexander Tepe I want to say, who used it to take second at Breaking Heads Cup, a 50-person strong event, and again it looks like the Sons of Sanguinius went undefeated and just lost on points. It's kind of interesting to know the similarities and differences between the different Blood Angels lists. The core of the list does look very, very similar. There's Dante, the Sanguinary Priest, and the Sanguinary Ancient again. A couple of the traits are swapped around. Dante does appear to have his Warlord trait in this one, so he'd be able to grant his rerolls and command phase buff 2 units all the way out to 9 inches. Otherwise again there's Soul Warden, Rites of War and the Wrath of Baal on the relevant characters. This list potentially starts with a bit more CP though, as it's formed out of a battalion, so you're not spending CP on a vanguard. To fill out the mandatory troops there's 2 units of 5 Incursors to take the midfield, 1 unit of cheap and effective assault intercessors, and again 1 unit of eliminators, again with a bolt carbine, this time with 2 snipers. A fair few more obsec bodies on the ground there, I guess trading out a little bit of quality on the jump packs, and a couple of other things from the last list like Lamarties and the Whirlwinds. For the rest of the units, there's a unit of Death Company with a similar setup, 4 Thunderhammers and jump packs, again a good one for Forlorn Fury if necessary, or just jumping out with the buffs and clobbering something if not. This set of Sanguinary Guard, there's 1 of 7 and 2 of 5. They take the swords and no pistols. And then perhaps the most different thing about this list is there's rather a lot of Red Blood Angels in attendance. 1 big unit of 10 Van Vets with lightning claws and chainswords, no storm shields on those. The big squad costs 280 points and will be hitting with a crazy amount of attacks, particularly in the assault doctrine. And then beyond that, maybe scooting around for doing objectives and things, are assault squads, 3 sets of 5 of them for 105 points, jump packs, a power sword and inferno pistol on the sergeant, and these ones shell out for a pair of melter guns each, giving them a bit more solid anti-tank punch when they get up close. Again, just by the tournament performance, clearly a very successful list, building around the same core, but going with a bit of a different slant on the jump pack marines, and going for more red armoured marines than black armoured ones. Lastly, I thought we'd take a look at a Blood Angels list of a slightly different flavour. This one's a fun one that takes a few less standard choices, but was still able to perform pretty decently at an event, taking second at the Dragonfall GT, a 30 people one, and went 4-1. Really quite a few cool and alternative picks in this one. The list is led by Mephiston, the only Blood Angels character to cross the Rubicon so far. He's got Quickening for extra combat, Unleash Rage to buff one of the units with exploding sixes if needed, and Wings of Sanguinius to swoop across the battlefield very fast. He's the Warlord, but I believe he doesn't take the traits. That one would be Speed of the Primarch to make him fight first. Then there's a good old-fashioned Smash Captain, a Death Company Captain with a jump pack, the Hammer of Baal relic, an Inferno pistol, and Imperium sword. The Hammer of Baal is an excellent thunder hammer that doesn't give you the -1 to hit, and also is AP3 not 2. The Death Company upgrade costs you 15 points, gets you the 6+ Feel No Pain and the Black Rage for an extra attack on the charge. Plus once per game he can activate his Death Vision, either get a 3+ Invul save, a damage buff, or go all in and a gamble for a bunch of mortal wounds. Really quite a fun and fluffy upgrade that one, as it basically represents the Blood Angels going mad and thinking that they can see Horus in front of them. Then on top of all that, he's also got the Imperium sword as well, allowing him to reroll charge rolls, and also you get +1 to your strength and attack whenever you fight, provided you've charged or made a heroic intervention. I believe when you tot that all up on top of Shock Assault, that'd be a massive total of 7 attacks, maybe re-rolling the ones to hit and hitting on 2s if you need to, or made at Strength 9, AP -3 and Damage 3, going up to AP -4 and 8 attacks if you happen to be in the Blood Angels Doctrine. Pretty crazy stuff, and it's quite nice to see a Smash Captain like that. If the stars align and say you get to charge an Imperial Knight or something when you're in Assault Doctrine and you pop the rerolls, you'd average something like 19 wounds on it. This guy really could be bringing down a whole lot of stuff if he does get to fight unrestricted. Moving on from the fun Smash Captain though, we've also got Lamarties for the Mantra of Strength and Canticle of Hate, bonus to the charges and personal melee boost, plus the Litany of Hates for Death Company rerolls if needed. A standard looking Sanguinary Ancient with the Sword and the Wrath of Baal jump pack to go further. The troops here are made up of Incursors and 2 units of Assault Intercessors this time, and then there's 3 units of Death Company, 2 with the 4 Thunderhammers and jump packs, again one of those will be good for Forlorn Fury, and then there's another interesting loadout where they all have Inferno pistols and a power sword. That's a surprisingly punchy Melter squad up close. It's interesting to see the different loadouts. There will be an awful lot of attacks at high AP I suppose, really quite good for clearing out things like Sisters of Battle maybe, and giving you an anti-tank punch with the Melter pistols first. There is of course 2 units of 7 Sanguinary Guard, 5 swords and 2 axes, hard to leave them at home, and they'll be getting the +1 to hit from Mephiston. And then finally, and perhaps one of the most interesting things in the list, are 2 Storm Speeder Hammer Strikes. Not a unit that you really often see in competitive Space Marine tournament lists, but also one that did get a bit of a points drop in the last chapter approved. That's the one with the big Melter Destroyer with the 3-shot multi-melter, plus the Hammer Strike missiles for a bunch of damage 3 shots. I guess the idea of them would be to try and zero in on important enemy targets while trying to stay hidden from the rest of the list and get multiple turns of firing. Not entirely sure how they were used, but I feel like it's a fair achievement to get 2 of them to second place in a GT. They are a bit off meta at the moment. Overall, looks like a fun list to play. I particularly like the Smash Captain. I'm sure he must be fun to just run into the enemy. And good to know that they can have a bit of success with different things, even if the tried and tested Mass Sanguinary Guard is perhaps the easiest way to go. So anyway, I think we'll leave that there for today. Hope you've enjoyed a look at a few strong Blood Angels army lists right now, and some of the strongest options open to the Sons of Sanguinius. As always, any insights or things that are missed about the list and how they were played are very much appreciated. Obviously they're not lists that I wrote, and I'm sure I'll be missing all kinds of things. If you've enjoyed the video, then feel free to subscribe to Auspex Tactics, where I'll certainly keep the regular 40k content coming. I'm sure I'll have more for Space Marines and Blood Angels in the future. Finally, if you have been enjoying all the videos on the channel, I would just like to mention that Auspex Tactics does have a Patreon page as well, and you can find that linked down in the video description if you're interested in helping support. Making all the 40k content like this does take an enormous amount of time and effort, and if you are enjoying a lot, any support is massively appreciated. Channel patrons do get a fair few advantages, seeing certain videos early each week, regular votes to see what sort of things happen next on the channel, and automatic entry into the regular prize giveaways with a chance to win some big model kits each month. If any of that sounds good to you, or you'd just like to help support, the link is down in the video description. In any case, an absolutely massive thank you for listening, and I'll hope to see you guys next time.